Today's show is brought to you by The Common Cold. Hello, Internet, and welcome to another episode of Favorite Things, the show where I talk about my all-time favorite bands and all their albums. Before we go on with the show, I want to apologize ahead of time. I am getting over a cold, so I'm a bit congested and my voice is deteriorating, but that's not stopping me from doing the show. I've been wanting to record this episode for quite some time, and I'm excited to get going with it. To recap a little bit, the last episode of Favorite Things I did, I talked about Flying Saucer Attack and all the albums in their discography. For today's episode, the band I'm going to talk about is not only a band that I consider my favorite, but they're also people that I know personally. They're an obscure band that has got a little bit more notoriety to them as the years have gone by, but I got affiliated with them for being a huge fucking nerd of the band, and they took notice of my nerdiness and admiration for them, and they decided to become friends with me. The band I am talking about today is called Trocadero. Trocadero is a four-piece band hailing from Cambridge, Massachusetts, fronted by none other than Nico Rowland. When the band was just getting started, Nico had put out a wanted poster looking for a female vocalist. In it, he talked about how he wanted to form a band and not a project. A project had the implication that you would do your thing and then you would be done and you would move on to the next thing. A band was something more concrete and something that would stay around no matter how many members would come in and out of the band or who would contribute what. They were still going to be the same thing. And at some point in the 2000s, they found that female vocalist and they began to rehearse. While the band is considered an alternative rock band, they did things a little bit differently. Instead of doing your traditional bass, guitar, vocals, and drums formula, they had, instead of a bass, a baritone guitar, another guitar, a drummer, and then a keyboard player. And this is what gave them their sound. The baritone guitar is an iconic and most important part of their music. Every album of theirs you hear, there is a baritone guitar in it. So the band came to be. Now enter 2003-2004 time, a show on the internet that was just starting to boom called Red vs. Blue debuted. Red vs. Blue was known as a machinima, essentially taking a video game and manipulating the characters in such a way that you're telling your own story rather than focusing on the story that's told in the video game itself. The group called Rooster Teeth that was making the show was using the video game Halo to make this show, and after posting a couple episodes, it blew up and people from all over the world were watching. Amongst those people were Trocadero's very own Nico, but Nico noticed an aspect about the show that inspired him to contact Rooster Teeth, so he typed an email commenting on the fact that the show was great, but it lacked music.
Oh, you know what? You could bitch about anything, couldn't you?
And attached to that email was an MP3 of Nico sitting down with his baritone guitar and riffing around. And somewhere in that MP3 file, we hear the iconic Red vs. Blue intro theme. So it is at this point where Trocadero and Rooster Teeth have come together, Nico admiring Rooster Teeth's work and Rooster Teeth admiring the work Nico has done. Rooster Teeth kept pumping out episodes of Red vs. Blue and even asked Trocadero to contribute more music for the show. And at some point down the line, we got this album. This is Trocadero's debut album, Roses Are Red and Violets Are Blue. On here it says these are songs from and inspired by Red vs. Blue. It includes the iconic intro theme, as well as songs like Blood Gulch Blues and A Girl Named Tex, which were completely inspired by the show. The other songs on here weren't necessarily affiliated with Rooster Teeth initially, but just so happened to be featured in the show. So in a sense, it's a mixed bag. It's partially a soundtrack for Red vs. Blue, and partially original songs that were written pre-Red vs. Blue. So the album came out, and that was that. The band kept doing what the band did, and Rooster Teeth kept doing what Rooster Teeth did. Now, this is where I came in. When I was just finishing my freshman year of high school and going into my sophomore year, I had been binge watching the entire series of Red vs. Blue, or rather what was out at the time, and I started to take a liking to the guitar riffs that were used in it, especially that intro theme. So I scoured the internet in hopes to find stuff, and eventually I stumbled across the name Trocadero, and I found that there were songs that were attached to Red vs. Blue, and I thought, okay, this must be the soundtrack. But when I heard them, I'll be honest, I was not into them. I was hoping to find those instrumental guitar tracks that were used in the show, and instead I was listening to songs with vocals and didn't really match the show. But at some point down the line, I revisited those songs, and that's when they clicked. It was Blood Gulch Blues that I remember listening to and falling absolutely in love with. And since I liked that song, I thought, okay, this Trocadero band isn't as bad as I thought. What else do they got? And that's when I heard songs like A Girl Named Tex, 617, and Superhero. But back in those days, you couldn't really listen to music as easily as you could now. There was no Spotify, they weren't even on iTunes, and you couldn't even listen to them on YouTube. So I saved up my allowance and begged my parents to order the CD off the Rooster Teeth website, and eventually they did. And for the entire summer of 2009, I listened to the shit out of this album. Even to this day, it's one of my favorite albums. So after months of listening to this album, I started to wonder, hey, is there more stuff of theirs out there? At the time, they had released one song called Alien Champion, which was supposed to be for their follow-up, Violets Are Blue, Roses Are Red. But there was also a side project called The Uggos, which was done for another Rooster Teeth machinima called Strangerhood. Now, Nico has explicitly said that the Uggos have no affiliation with Trocadero at all. It was a project specifically for the Strangerhood. But since I was a fan of Nico and his compositions, I thought, okay, I'll give this album a listen. And while the songs on here are much more eclectic than the songs on Trocadero's first album, it's still a solid record. There's some great songs on here like Crazy Zoo, Bye Nikki Bye, Thank You, and Tell Me.
Tell me, are you scared? Tell me, are you lonely? Were you hypnotized by someone's little game? Tell me, are you bored?
So I was the proud owner of both of these albums, listening to them over and over and over again. So for the rest of 2009, there was a quiet period with the band, and I was left just having to re-listen to the two albums that I owned. And as I said before, you couldn't listen to them as easily as you can now. The only place you could really buy the CD was on the Rooster Teeth website, and even then you weren't really able to sample the album as well as you could on iTunes. And I was so inspired by the music that I was listening to, I thought, people need to hear this stuff. It is so good and cannot be ignored. That's when I created a YouTube channel called Trocadero Fan Page. Trocadero Fan Page, as the title suggests, was a fan page dedicated to Trocadero. There I posted every single song that was featured on the album for everybody who was a fan of Trocadero to be able to listen to. And slowly but surely, people were starting to notice. There was a mixture of people who were fans of the band too and were very thankful that they had an outlet to listen to them, as well as attracting some new people who had never heard of the band but liked Red vs. Blue and were glad they were able to hear the songs. So on Trocadero Fan Page, I posted this album and this album for people to listen to, as well as encouraging them to buy the album if they liked it by going onto the Rooster Teeth website, getting it, and supporting the band. And for a time, I enjoyed some success. But because there was nothing else I could work with, I left the channel to do what it did. But then, in 2009, we got the trailer for a new Trocadero album. As both the guy behind Trocadero Fan Page and a fan of Trocadero, I was shitting my pants. I was thrilled to get the album, and I watched the trailer so many times because I wanted to hear the little snippets of songs that were going to show up on the album, and I would just get even more excited every time I heard the songs. The trailer for the new album was posted on their website, which at the time wasn't updated as frequently as I would have liked. And so in order to get the word out even further, I took my unregistered Hypercam 2, recorded the footage, and then posted it on my channel. That's when I got contacted by the editor of the video asking me, hey, can you remove this video and I'll give you an actual good quality of the video so you can upload it to the channel. And that was surprising to me because I was pretty young at that time, and when I got the message from him, I thought, oh god, I'm in so much trouble, I'm gonna get sued or whatever. And for him to be like, no, here's the original file, put it on the channel, get the word out, I was perplexed, but I was excited to say the least. So I uploaded the video for all the subscribers to see and got the hype up. And then eventually we got Ghosts That Linger.
We're gonna fight the good fight. We're gonna fight the good fight. And I'm locked and loaded, sugar coated, and I'm ready, baby, for you.
This is a great follow-up to Roses Are Red, Violets Are Blue, and the format is very similar to that album as well. It's a mixture of songs specifically for Red vs. Blue, while also having some original songs by the bands. Some of my personal favorite songs on here were Good Fight, Heart with Wings, Goldmine Blues, Alien Champion, and then Colors. Colors, I think, was the song I was most excited about because there is one verse on there where they sing in Japanese. Not to go into too much detail as to why they did that, but it was for Red vs. Blue. And back in those days, I was a big weeaboo, and I loved anime, and I loved J-pop and J-rock. So for one of my favorite bands to do something in Japanese was really cool. So as I did with the previous two albums, I took every individual track and uploaded each of them onto Trocadero fan page for the rest of the people to enjoy. And once again, that was that. I let the channel do its thing, I let the people listen, comment, and talk about how much they love Trocadero. The subscriptions went up. But that wasn't my primary YouTube channel, and I wouldn't necessarily log into it all the time. Every so often I would log in, see how many comments I had, see what people were saying, maybe remove some if necessary, or just respond if I needed to. But one faithful day, I got a message from a Nico Roland, and as it turns out, it was not a troll account, it was actually Nico himself. Nico had written me a message personally thanking me for all the hard work I had done for the channel and getting Trocadero's name out there. He even asked me for my email address, and from there we swapped email addresses and began talking and getting to know one another. I asked a lot of questions about Trocadero and talked a lot about them and how much I fucking love them and was total fanboy. But thank God Nico was so cool and respectful, and he humored me and told me everything I wanted to know about Trocadero and recording and all that kind of stuff. And I even got the privilege of playing Halo 3 online with him. So as you can imagine, being this huge nerd of the band, making a YouTube channel dedicated to them, and having the lead guy from the band contact me, tell me that I'm awesome, and ask to play Halo with me was... I couldn't believe it. So that is one of my absolute fondest memories. I got to get to know one of my favorite musicians of all time. Now fast forward a couple years to 2012. Rooster Teeth is getting bigger and bigger and bigger by the year. Trocadero is getting a little bit more notice. Trocadero fan page is getting more subscribers as the time goes. And then eventually we got this album. This is Trocadero's third album, Flying by Wire.
We only want to have a good time. Flying by wire, we cross a green line.
Like the previous albums, it is a mixed bag of songs that are for Red vs. Blue as well as some original cuts. This album, however, leaned more towards the scores of Red vs. Blue, having fewer songs with vocals and focusing more on instrumental cuts. And I'll admit, when I first listened to this album, I was kind of disappointed by it, but gradually I have gotten to love this album. It's definitely up there, and I think it shouldn't be discredited from their discography. It's got some great songs like Bolt, 50, The Man in Red, Best Girl, and Shotgun.
Shotgun woman, shotgun, standing tall, shotgun, drinking whiskey, shotgun, and she won't back down. Shotgun woman, shotgun.
And again, as I did with the last two albums, I took every individual track and posted them onto Trocadero fan page. Now at this time too, not only were Rooster Teeth's Trocadero and Trocadero fan page also going up, but Facebook had also gained popularity, and Nico and mine's friendship moved from just chatting through email to actually friending one another on Facebook. Every so often we would chat about little things. Sometimes he would send me things he's working on, sometimes I would ask him, hey, what are you listening to? I'm curious, and he would turn me on to bands. But it was in 2014 when Nico reached out to me one day and said, hey, we're working on a live album that will feature a video and audio aspect, and I'm looking for somebody to watch the live footage and see if there's any hiccups or things that could be fixed. And from there he gave me access to the video that was the work in progress of a performance the band had done at RTX.
Won the gunplay, all in fair play, but I had to know why this man wore crimson, red from head to toe.
And so after a couple days of watching the footage, I gave him my notes and we began to chat again. That's when Nico said the product is almost done, but the only thing missing is a title, and I want the title to be a lyric from one of our songs. So that's when I suggested, well, why not When We're Together, live in Austin, Texas. And that's when we got When We're Together, live in Austin, Texas.
When we're together, others don't matter much to us. When we're together, maybe it's enough for us.
So let's recap a little bit. I went from being this huge nerd of a band that was so obscure that only people who had seen this show online would really know about, making a YouTube channel dedicated to them, getting praise from the main guy from the band, being able to chat with him and play Halo with him, to now being able to name one of their albums. The amount of bricks that were shit when that happened made a wall. I cannot be more honored to have named one of their albums. Even if it was something I didn't write and it was something from their songs, it's still something I said, and it's still something that Nico will give me credit towards. It's been 4 years since When We're Together came out, and Trocadero has released some albums since then, but they have actually been proper Red vs. Blue soundtracks. Rooster Teeth hired Nico to work on the original score of Red vs. Blue. Nico has also brought on other musicians to work on the music, and we have more score and ambient sounding stuff as opposed to the full band stuff that we've heard in the earlier albums. So to wrap things up a little bit, I will say that I love Trocadero so much. I love everything they have put out. I, again, am so honored to be able to call myself a friend of Nico and be able to have named one of their albums. It's been an incredible privilege. A new Red vs. Blue soundtrack is coming out very, very, very soon, and I think for old time's sake, I'm gonna have to get it in order to put it up on Trocadero fan page. So I'll leave links in the description for you to check out everything that I've talked about, from albums to Trocadero fan page to Red vs. Blue to Rooster Teeth. They'll all be down there. I encourage you to look into them. There's some great stuff there. And thus, that concludes this episode of Favorite Things. Thank you all very much for watching and listening to me babble about my favorite band. My voice definitely needs a rest because it is on fire right now. But I'll end with saying, if you like this video, give me a like and click that subscribe button as well as the bell icon for any new videos. I try to post something every single week, and I definitely will be back with another episode of Favorite Things. So this is Olin from What I'm Listening To, signing out, goodbye, and thank you for watching.